This is Professor Lorenzo McCoy of HealThyselfUniversity.net, the place that you come to transform yourself, not for the new year, but for the new you. In 30 days, let me show you step by step how to get into the excellent shape for the rest of your life without going to the gym and killing yourself, without nasty foods and things like that, but using neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to remap itself and retrain itself to be a new person. Today's quote being January the 8th, the first month, week number 2 of 2018. Time which changes people does not alter the image we have retained of them. Marcel Proust. Now, I like this one because, and I'm not going to play, I'm going to start doing most of the talking instead of just using a lot of the Tim Robbins, Tony Robbins, and Les Browns and stuff like that. I'm going to have to start just giving you my perspective. I think it's a little lazy of me just to keep just putting up different videos. I might do it from time to time, but not every single day. The thing about this one is, people do understand that time does change people, or it seems to, because time in itself is just an invention by humans so that we can better relate to each other, so we can show up at the same occurrence, the same place, at the same incidents. I don't want to use the term time in the definition, but I like this one because the way that people see you is the way that they will always see you. Time is gonna either, well, see what we call in time, and let's change. Let me change that. Let me reframe that, because there's really no such thing as time. The sun is independent of you. We are dependent upon the sun, and that's where we get our time from. That's where the seconds and minutes and hours come from. The days has to do with our reference to the sun. So time in itself doesn't really exist. But as those days progress, as those years progress, be that person still alive or that person not even on this planet anymore, if we love them, we will always love them. That's what this is saying. Time which changes people, gets you all wrinkled. We call that time, but it's really not time in itself. It's just progression of what we call time. It's a way of us looking at things. The thing that's interesting, if you presented yourself a certain way to people and they just couldn't stand you, it doesn't matter if you're dead and gone or not. They still have that image of you. See, that's why when people lose their parents, you think that is because it's been 50 years they don't still love their parents? They still love their parents. That child, if you ever lose a child, it doesn't matter that it's been 100 years. They still are trying their best to remember that smell, that laughter, the way that child moved. They're never going to forget them. They can have a lot more children. Sometimes they might even name one of their other children that name of that child is gone. That's why people name their children after mom and daddy, great mom and grandfather, so that that person can live on, because there's an image we have in our minds of that person. And time is irrelevant. So that's what this is saying. The time changes people. You get older. But isn't it some when you meet someone, you may not have seen them since kindergarten. Right when you see them, it goes back to kindergarten. It does not alter the image we have retained in our mind of that person. And I'm not going to even get into the science of the amygdala and the hippocampus and all that type of stuff, talking about memory, but I think we already get that. There's an image we have in our mind of people, and time doesn't seem to deter that. Unless there's just something wrong with your brain, you just forget. That can happen. You have brain damage, you get senile, you don't really remember people. But if your brain is working correctly, it doesn't matter if it's been 5 minutes or 100 years. That image that you have of that person is still the same. It's either positive or negative. Or it could be even neutral. If it's neutral, you probably won't really remember that person. But if it's somebody that's really influential to you, somebody you couldn't stand, used to bully you and things like that, the second you see them again, you still have that image of them. But isn't that something? If there was something negative, as long as one of you are alive, there's still a chance to reframe that and make it positive. That person can come back and apologize. And it will change. Then it will change that image. It's not time. That's what I think this quote is all about. It's not the time, it's us. Time, like, so when a lot of people, they do something, they feel like, oh, I don't have to apologize. I see a lot of people put it on Facebook, I forgive myself for what I've done to everybody. Now, as a certain point, you have to do that because you don't always have the opportunity, especially if somebody's dead and gone. You always don't have the opportunity to apologize. But if you have the opportunity, you should apologize. Don't just recuse yourself from the situation. I apologize to myself about what I did to someone else. No, that's something you should do with that person if you have that opportunity to. But don't beat yourself up about it for the rest of your life to where you can't move on. And they shouldn't do that also. So it's not the time, you know what I'm saying, that changes the image. It's your own brain. So it will behoove you, it will be at your best interest to make sure that every time you meet someone, do your best to be the best in that person's mind. And I guarantee you, no matter how much time goes on, now this is good for relationships, for jobs, for love interests, and all of that. Even if it seemed like you didn't get anything from it, you shook people's hand, you passed out a lot of resumes, they may, when they see you again or just see their resume a year later, you're thinking, oh man, I thought I made a great impression. You probably did. It's just that that wasn't the so-called time. But when they look at your picture on your resume, your curriculum vitae or whatever, they like, oh, I remember that person. I remember that smile. They were always smiling. I just didn't have anything for them at the time. But now I'm looking at that person a couple of years later sometimes. Yeah, I remember you. How are you doing? Well, yeah, I put in the application with you guys, but oh yeah, well, we got a couple of people, but wait, what are you doing now? We do have something available. You never know. Or if you were an asshole, excuse the language, to someone, they remember that too. And you're thinking, oh, that was a long time ago. It wasn't long enough. They still remember how much of an asshole you were. And I'm going to leave it at that. It's not the time, people, that alters the image that we have of people. And I want you to remember that. No matter how much time goes by, people still remember how good of a person you were and how bad of a person you were. Make sure you're always putting your best foot forward. Now, of course, if they choose to see you in a negative light, that's on them. You just make sure you always put your best foot forward. Don't argue with people. It can be hard, but let them argue with themselves. There is no argument if you don't coincide and agree to argue back with them. Just know and understand, like Tony Robbins always said, when somebody comes to you negatively, they're either crying out for help, they need something, you know what I'm saying, or there's some type of loss they're feeling in themselves. You don't have to go back and forth with them. Just understand that they're crying out for you, for your help. This has been Professor Lorenzo McCoy, January 8th. Have a great day.